2, 1.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second Live at 5 of the winter, where we're going to be focusing on awards and financial aid. My name is Carly Glantz, and I am the National Recruitment Advisor here at Carleton. And I'm also a relatively recent grad from our International Business Program here with our Sprott School of Business. And I'm really happy to be here today to introduce our speaker, who's going to chat with you all about awards and financial aid. But before we do that, there's a couple kind of housekeeping things that I want to cover. The first thing is that we really encourage you to use the Q&A function within this presentation. So put all your questions in the chat. We have a full team here to answer them. And as well, we're going to do a live Q&A with our special guest, Sam, at the end to cover any of your burning questions about awards and financial aid. Today's also a really special day because I saw on my Facebook memories today that today's actually the day that I accepted my offer to Carleton for international business a couple years ago. So big day for me. It really kind of allowed me to reminisce on my time at Carleton. So hopefully you folks have applied. Maybe you have an offer in your hand. You're almost ready to accept. So congratulations if you do. If you don't have an offer quite yet, don't sweat it. Lots of time to get one of those in your hand. So thanks again for joining us today. We have a whole schedule of Live at 5s coming at you every Wednesday at 5 p.m. The next two that are coming up next Wednesday at 5, we're going to be talking with residents and housing. So they're going to tell you all about the residence deadline, the different style of rooms that we have, how you can go about accepting your residence offer, and some information about what it's like to live on campus. I lived on campus in my first year and I absolutely loved it. Such a good way to meet new people. So if you are thinking about residence, definitely tune in next Wednesday at 5 p.m. And then the Wednesday after that at 5 p.m., the 24th, we have a very exciting Live at 5, and we're actually going to be doing a live guided tour of campus. So we have an awesome virtual tour for you folks. Obviously, we would love to welcome you on campus, but we can't do that right now. So definitely check out our live guided virtual tour, and you can register for both of those upcoming Live at 5s through your Carleton 360 account. And one of my colleagues will put the link as well for those upcoming Live at 5s in the Q&A. So check those out, and we can't wait to see you there. Now, before we jump into our presentation today, we want to start the presentation how we do with every presentation that we do here at Carleton. And that is to acknowledge that the location of our campus is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. It's really important for us to start our presentations with this because inclusivity on our campus and acknowledgement of where we came from is a huge part of what we stand for within our community. And we're actually doing one thing that was just announced, and we're actually renaming 2 buildings on our campus to better represent those communities. So we're going to be naming one building with our Algonquin community in mind and one with our Inuit community in mind. So stay tuned for those awesome new names that are going to be representative of our community here at Carleton. Now, before I introduce our special guest, I do want to mention one more event that's coming up, and that is our March break event. If you are excited about Carleton and you're looking to talk to more people, whether that's a faculty member, maybe a future professor, a current student in one of our programs, you won't want to miss our virtual March break open house. So on March 13th, which is a Saturday, we're going to be focusing on and featuring our Faculty of Engineering and Design, as well as our Faculty of Science. So if you apply to any programs within those 2 faculties, you'll want to check out the events happening on March 13th. On March 19th, which is a Friday, we're going to be hosting the Sprott School of Business. So if you apply to Commerce or International Business, you'll want to check us out and join us on March 19th. And then on March 20th, we're going to be focusing on our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences and our Faculty of Public Affairs. So if you're not sure exactly what faculty your program that you apply to falls under, we will put a list actually of programs in the chat as well. So you'll be able to see exactly which day you should join us for our virtual March break event. We have a ton of other events coming up throughout the winter. Hopefully, because you're here tonight, you're staying connected with us through your Carleton 360 account. Make sure you're checking out our events on Carleton 360 and on our website, and we're always here to chat if you have any questions. So without further ado, we're going to hop into why you're here tonight for our Live at 5 on all things awards on financial aid. Such an interesting topic, lots of information to gather tonight. So remember to feel free to post your questions in the Q&A and we will definitely get to them. So without further ado, I want to introduce Sam, who is a member of our Awards and Financial Aid office here, and she's the Student Awards and Financial Aid Assistant. Welcome, Sam.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Carly. So as Carly mentioned, my name is Sam. I'm the Student Awards and Financial Aid Assistant at Carleton University. And I've been with the awards office for coming up on 3 years. So I've seen many students come through our doors and seen a lot graduate as well. So I'm really excited to chat with all of you today. We're going to go through a bunch of scholarship information, bursary information, Osap, and then also kind of wrap up with some dates and deadlines. To start, at Carleton, we do have 3 types of funding. I mentioned the scholarship bursaries and government financial aid. Scholarships and bursaries are awards issued by Carleton to students to help offset the cost of school. Scholarships are awarded based on academic performance, while bursaries are awarded based on financial need. Again, the last form of the funding is government financial aid. I'm going to focus on Osap just because the majority of our students do come from Ontario. If you are an out-of-province student, don't worry, I'll touch a bit on how we can help you out with that as well. So to start, we'll start with our scholarships. For incoming students, entrance scholarships are our first big category. They're automatically assessed with an application for admission to Carleton. So once you receive an offer to Carleton, if eligible for a scholarship, it will be included as part of that offer. Students with an admission average of 80% or higher are automatically awarded these scholarships, and they range in value from $4,000, which is issued as $1,000 per year for 4 years, up to $16,000. That's $4,000 per year for 4 years. They are renewable. That's kind of how that breakdown per year goes. And they are renewable for up to 4 years. There are some that are a little bit less. Usually if you're doing a general program as opposed to an honors program, those will be for 3 years. Aside from those entrance scholarships that you're automatically assessed for, there are a couple extra ones. The first major group are our prestige scholarships. Prestige scholarships are awarded based on an application, and to be eligible for a prestige scholarship, you must have an admissions average of 90% or higher, and be able to display some participation in extracurricular activities. The selection committee is going to look at activities that showcase your leadership qualities, that showcase kind of how you work within your community. And as part of this application, there is also a reference letter that you'll need to complete. There's one application for all 25 awards that will be awarded, and they range from $20,000 to full domestic tuition. So they're very lucrative awards, and I would recommend you get those applications in early. We still have quite a bit of time. The deadline isn't till March 1st. But it's good to get them in early just to make sure if there's any hiccups in your application or anything like that, that we can iron those out before the deadline. In addition to prestige scholarships, there are 6 other scholarships that have varying criteria based on, they can be students coming from specific areas in the country, they can be based on the programs that you're going into. So it's important for you to check those out on our website, on the awards office website, because each of them will have their own application and the eligibility criteria will be listed on our website there. So that is kind of the wrap up for scholarships. Again, those are the academic-based awards, and the large portion of them are automatically assessed, except for the prestige and those handful of other entrance scholarships. So now we'll move on to bursaries. So bursaries are based on financial need. There are some that have some other criteria I'll mention, but for the most part, we don't have access to that information. So you submit an application at Carleton for admission. It'll have things like your grades and all of that stuff, but we won't know whether you're in financial need. So as part of the application, you'll be looking at assessing your financial need, typically through a part of the application called the budget sheet. And it's just your resources versus your expenses. Now, for a lot of students, and I'm sure you're thinking, how do I know this? I'm not even sure whether I'll be living on res or living at home or that sort of thing. For most students, it's based off of whether you're going to be applying for government financial aid or have some other form of funding, because bursaries are meant to supplement that funding. So the main eligibility criteria is that you have to have applied and been offered admission to an undergraduate degree. You're a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, and there's that government financial need, or sorry, demonstrated financial need with that government financial aid application. You'll access this through your Carleton portal. So once you have an offer of admission, it will pop up there. And the deadline for those is June 30th. So you have some time for that one. The second big group of entrance scholarships are our entrance bursaries, apologies, our leadership entrance bursaries. The difference between this and the general entrance bursary are that you have to have participated in some extracurricular activities. So that's kind of the leadership part of it. As part of the application, you'll outline some of the leadership qualities you have. There are 7 of these entrance bursaries that range from $5,000 to full tuition plus $1,000 towards books. So I'd really encourage you to take a look at the applications and eligibility criteria for these awards. Again, those are listed on our awards office website. There is a separate application for each one of these because they do have those varying eligibility criteria. So it's important to look at those applications carefully. Now, there is a little point here where there's something called external awards. All of the awards I've mentioned up till now have been awards that are specifically issued by Carleton to Carleton students. There are, however, a large number of awards that are offered by community organizations that you may be eligible for. These can be a little bit harder to find because they're not linked to a specific university or college. They're based on criteria like being a part of a certain union, like your parents may have been. There's Tim Hortons awards. There's a large number of them. To help kind of find these, we've put on our website, on the awards office website, links to a couple databases that help to compile the eligibility criteria and applications for those awards. So check those links out. We don't manage those databases, but they are very, very robust databases. So now I'll move on to the government financial aid. Like I mentioned, I'm going to focus on OSAP. That's just because at Carleton, we're able to look into your OSAP applications and administer the OSAP program. If you are an out-of-province student, you'll want to directly apply to your specific province's website. They're going to be your administrative officers through this. So if there's any sort of questions you have about applying or anything like that, you need to consult your province. We do link the various websites for each province on the awards office website. So if you're unsure of where to go, it is there. And we do have someone on campus, in our office, helping out to kind of guide students through that process. But unfortunately, you will need to double check with the province to make sure that your application is sound and that sort of stuff. So, what is OSAP? OSAP is the Ontario Student Assistance Program, and it's a provincial financial aid program that offers grants and loans to help students pay for their university education. It's important to note there's one application for both the grant and the loan portion. So if you're a little bit concerned about loans or just wanting to look at how much grant funding you're eligible for, there's just the one application. So I would encourage you to take a look at applying for that. At any point, students are able to opt in or out of the loan. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking of applying. On that same vein, OSAP does use a number of factors to determine eligibility and values. These include tuition, course load, and the financial resources of the student and the student's family. The four most common financial resources used as part of the OSAP application are your expected parental contribution, which is based on the previous tax year. So for the upcoming fall/winter, when you apply, they're going to be looking at the 2020 tax year. This also takes into account the size of the family and the number of children that will be attending post-secondary while you're coming to. The second form of financial resource that we commonly see is the expected award income from Carleton and external agencies. Those external agencies I'm referring to are those external awards like the community awards. Carleton will report any awards that the student receives that are issued from Carleton. So your entrance scholarship, if you get a prestige scholarship, if you have an entrance bursary, all of those we will report for you. However, it's your responsibility to then list any awards that you receive from other organizations, those external scholarships. You'll see that when you start doing the application for the OSAP funding. It is a little bit hard to see on there, but just make sure you don't report Carleton awards. The third common form of financial resource is the student's expected employment income. So if you're planning on working part-time whilst in school, you'll just need to estimate the amount of employment income you're expected to receive during that time. It is an estimation, and you can update it at any point. So if something changes, if for whatever reason you make more or less, you can let us know and we can help you update the application. And then the fourth form is liquid assets that are owned by the student. Liquid assets is just a fun little word for significant savings, basically. And they have to be under your name. So if they're under your parents' name, that's not included. It's specifically your name. Now, applying for OSAP is a two-stage process. Right now, you can go ahead and set up your OSAP profile. You can't submit the application yet because it's not ready, but when you set up your OSAP profile right now, you'll have an option, the ability to link your OUF account with the OSAP account, which will make the actual application to OSAP a little bit easier. You'll also be able to set up a verified email. And the really good thing about this is that you'll get an email when the application is ready. So you don't have to keep checking in on the OSAP website to see if there's is it ready yet? Can I apply? they'll let you know. So that's the first step, is just setting up your OSAP profile. You'll need your SIN for that, and you'll have to know when you were born. So 2 key pieces of information for that. The second step is just submitting the application. The application usually opens up in the spring, so just as your grade 12 year or your high school is winding down, typically around May. You must submit a new application every year, so it doesn't auto-renew every year. So this first one will be setting up for the first year at Carleton, and then in May next year, you'll be applying for your second year of Carleton. So just make sure that you apply every year. And when you link your OUAC to the OSAP in the first stage, what that does is that allows OSAP to create sort of like a template of all of the programs you've applied for, and then it's up to you to make sure the information's correct on those templates, and then complete the application further. So it kind of just, it organizes it a little bit for you so that when you go to actually submit the application, it's all ready and you can just go through the steps of completing the application at that point. Now this is a lot about OSAP. So where can we help you at the awards office? Literally at any step we can help you. So when we are just in this process of the OSAP process, then we can be here to answer your general questions. We can be here to help when you're starting to apply for OSAP. We can then, when you're going through the OSAP application and you come across any hiccups, or if there's information you're not sure of where to input on the application, we can help you out figuring out where you can put that information. Then finally, when the actual assessments run, so when you receive the entitlement amount that you're expecting for school, this usually is in June, we can answer any questions you may have about why it was calculated that way and how your funds are actually going to be dispersed. This does appear on the OSAP website once you've submitted the application. It'll give you a bit of a breakdown, but sometimes it's easier to talk with someone about how that looks and how it's going to be issued out to you. Once your assessment's ready to go and you start school, we're also here to just be there if something changes on your application. So like I mentioned, if you make more money or make less money, or your living situation changes or anything like that, we're here to help you advise you on how to update your OSAP application and what that's going to mean for your entitlement. So at any point you can let us know if there's any changes, and it's important to note that this means the OSAP application is flexible. So once you've submitted the application, we encourage you to keep checking back in on your OSAP account, because that's where we're going to be notifying, sending notifications through, and that's where you're going to see those changes reflect when you start going through your career. So that was the lovely world of OSAP. It's a very complex system, but we're here to help you throughout the whole thing. So now we'll move into some important dates and deadlines. Now, there are a lot coming up. There's different deadlines for each award. As I mentioned, the Prestige scholarships are the first deadline coming up, and that's March 1st. The next one that comes up is April 2nd, and that's for those other entrance scholarships and the majority of the leadership entrance bursaries. So if you're thinking of applying for those, you do have a little bit of time. We're February 10th now, so there's still a good 3 weeks to get your application done. And so if you're thinking of applying, it's best to start now, especially when you're thinking of references and who to ask. It'll just give them enough time to form a good reference for you. As I mentioned, in the next kind of big one is spring 2021, and that's when the OSAP application will launch for next year. We don't have a firm date on that, just because there are some changes that need to be made to the actual process and application that the ministry is doing. So that'll come a little more clear as we get closer to that deadline. June 30th is the entrance bursary deadline. It's also the date that we recommend submitting your application by. So for OSAP, sorry. It takes a little bit of time to do the full processing on the OSAP application. So we recommend just submitting it by June 30th. So if there are any hiccups that would take a little bit longer in processing, we have time to make sure the funding is available to you when you're starting school, when you need it the most. So that's the last major deadline. I'll just send it back over to Carly for our Q&A session, and we'll chat about some common questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. We have tons of questions coming in the Q&A. So our team is definitely answering some in the back end, but there's some that I want to ask you aloud. The first one that's coming in is a question from a student that is hoping to do co-op. For the 4-year entrance scholarships, how is it distributed when they're in co-op? Do they still get to keep their scholarship?
That's a great question. You do. So if you're doing a co-op work term and you've renewed your scholarship for that year, you'll need to let us know which term you're planning on going on co-op that year, and we'll defer that installment to the next full-time study term that you're in. So let's say if you're doing, you renewed for your 3rd year and you're going on a co-op work term in fall. You would let us know so we can defer your fall installment to the winter term, and then your winter installment would go to the next full-time study term. So that sometimes is summer and sometimes is fall again.
Okay, awesome. And the next question that I have here is from a student who is looking to get OSAP, and they're wondering if they just take the government grants but not the loans, are they still eligible for a bursary through Carleton?
Yes, they can still apply and be assessed for a bursary. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So another person is looking to apply for the Prestige Scholarship and just wants to know if you have any tips to make their application stand out.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The main thing that we get with Prestige applications is we get a lot of really high-performing students, obviously, with those applications. So what really makes people stand apart is their reference letters. So it's important to choose someone who can talk to your leadership qualities and your abilities, that they've seen you basically participate in the community and that sort of stuff. Because they can give you a little bit more than just the number of hours that you completed and your academic standing. They can really speak to who you are. So that's kind of the big tip that I give out is make sure your reference is a strong one.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. Another question, not sure if you have the answers to this one, but for bursaries, are you able to tell us what the target required income is to be eligible?
So that's a tough one because it depends on the family situation, and it depends on the other costs of your living costs and that sort of thing. So there isn't necessarily a target income for where we cut off, I guess is a good word for that. What we would recommend is just submit the application because it's going to go through and show us your full resources and your full expenses. And then we'll be assessing based on that and any other information you include.
Okay, great. So it's worth applying even if you're not sure if you're going to kind of make that quote unquote cutoff. It would take a lot of different things into account. So definitely good to still apply.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to confirm, for the Prestige scholarships, are there interviews or is it just the written application and references?
It's just the written application and one reference. So if you submit more than one reference, only one will be sent to the selection committee. So you'll want to choose someone that's really strong. Yeah, there's no interview process for that.
Okay, and another Prestige question. Lots of folks interested in the Prestige scholarships, which is awesome. If a student was successful with one of our Prestige scholarships, does it replace their entrance scholarship?
Yes, it will. So if you were given let's say the $16,000 entrance scholarship, and you then received the one of the big ones is the Collins Prestige Scholarship, which is full tuition, that would then replace your $16,000 scholarship. However, if you receive a Prestige Scholarship and you applied for one of the leadership bursaries, they would be offered together.
Okay, great. Another Prestige Scholarship question. If the student doesn't have a 90% right now, so their grades were a little bit lower in grade 11, but they think that they're on track to have a 90 or above, should they still go ahead and apply for the Prestige Scholarship?
Yes, do apply, because we will be reassessing your admissions average based on updated grades. So if you think you're on track for it, go ahead and submit an application.
Okay, and kind of adding on to that, if they are chosen as a successful candidate for the Prestige Scholarship and then their average drops below 90 by their finals, will the award be revoked?
No, it will not be. You'll still get it.
And when would that, for that March 1st Prestige Scholarship application, when would they hear back?
So the selection committee will meet in April typically, and have their recipients by the end of April. Usually end of April, early May for when the students are notified of that. And even if you were not selected for the Prestige Scholarships, you would still get a notification as to the outcome of your application.
Okay, that's great. So you will hear either way, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Do you need to apply to Osap first before you apply for a bursary?
No, you don't need to. We will be assessing the entrance bursaries a little bit later on in the year. The other thing too is that on the applications, there's a question that asks, are you anticipating applying for government financial aid? If you are, just select yes for that, and then we'll assess your bursary as per that.
Okay. The next question is a bit of a two-parter. So if they have a scholarship and then they go on an exchange or a placement abroad, do they still receive their entrance scholarship for that year?
That's kind of it depends question. You will get it if you're going on an exchange and you're still paying Carleton for your tuition fees. If you're not paying for Carleton for the tuition fees, we wouldn't be able to issue it that year, but we could the following year. So it's just a matter of kind of like co-op, we would defer the scholarship, but there is the option to still receive the funds if not delayed a year.
Okay, and there actually was a follow-up question to that co-op question. So they just want to be clear that they don't get that scholarship for the semester that they're working, correct? It's deferred to the following year.
That's correct, yeah, and that's just because when you're on co-op work term, your tuition fees and your credit load are much different than when you're studying full-time. So it won't let us issue the scholarship installment for that year, but we'll defer to the next full-time study term.
Okay, awesome. And I want to thanks again, Sam, so much for this rapid fire question period. I feel like this is awesome. So keep the questions coming. The next thing, can you just touch on again financial aid for people outside of Ontario? Just what are the next steps that they should take if they're outside of Ontario?
Yeah, so whatever province you're in, you'll want to go to the specific program for that province. So let's say you're in BC. You would go to BC's government financial aid website, which we do link on the awards office website itself, and follow the steps on their website to create a profile, submit an application. They have a similar, most of the provinces, I can't speak for all of them, but most of the provinces have a similar, you can sign up your email and you'll get an email. But that would be your next step, is just to go on to the province's financial aid website and start the profile building and go from there.
Perfect. And this one, you might want them to contact the office because I'm not sure if it's specific, but for an international student with Canadian citizenship, are they eligible for OSAP after their first year at Carleton?
So that's kind of hitting on the Ontario residency requirements. I can go over that. For that specific student, I'd really encourage them to reach out to us just because there are some extra questions I'd like to ask them that would help me determine their eligibility. But it's a good thing to bring up the Ontario residency requirements for OSAP specifically. For OSAP, in order to be an Ontario resident, you must have resided in Ontario for 12 months consecutively without being in post-secondary studies. So if you're coming from, let's say, again, like a Saskatchewan or Manitoba or an outer province, if you're going to be living in Ontario, you need to have lived in Ontario without attending Carleton for 12 months in order to be eligible for OSAP.
Okay, awesome. And I see Lorena's posting the email to contact awards. So it's awards@carleton.ca. So for that specific student or anyone else that has specific personal questions, feel free to send an email to awards@carleton.ca. I have another question here about the reference for the Prestige Scholarship. Any insight into whether it's better to have a reference that knows your kind of characteristics that in regards to your program, or more so extracurriculars, or does it not matter as long as it is showing how you excel in the community?
If that reference can speak to your academics and your community involvement, that would be like a pretty strong one, right? Because they'd be able to say how you are in the classroom, but also how you are out in the community, and point to how you use your leadership skills in the community. If you have to choose one or the other, it can be really difficult for a teacher to really get your full leadership portfolio just from seeing you in the classroom, unless they've seen you outside of the classroom as well. So it's kind of important to think of it a little bit more strategically, in that you're going to want to find someone who can speak to who you are as a person and less about just your grades, because we'll get your admissions average and we'll know that you have a stellar academic career already, but we won't necessarily see your leadership skills just in that.
Okay, great. And kind of just logistics about the Prestige Scholarship. Do they submit their reference as a separate attachment in that application?
That is kind of an up to you question. So we'll accept the application and the reference together. We'll accept them in separate emails, separate attachments. All of those are good. The only thing that we ask, if you're going to be sending them separately, is that you put identifying criteria either in your email or on the file itself. So if your reference is sending their reference letter separately, just make sure you either let them know that, well, they should know your full name if they're giving you a reference, but just confirm with them your full name. And if you know it, it's really helpful to have your Carleton application number or Carleton ID. It just helps us match up the application and the letter. So whichever one is easiest for you, just make sure that you include all of that information.
Awesome. And we'll take a couple more questions here, and then we will finish answering all the other questions in the chat. Do you have any insight into how current students pay off their OSAP loans? Are there lots of students that work on campus, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so there are quite a lot of students that work on campus. With OSAP, it might be helpful to kind of think about how the OSAP program works once you enter into repayment. So with OSAP, you don't have to start repaying your loan until 6 months after your last full-time study semester. So it's not based off of your program being 4 years, and they look at it as after 4 years you have to start studying or start paying. What it is when you do your OSAP application, we confirm that you're a full-time student, and then 6 months after that last date that we confirmed you full-time, you'd begin your repayment. So while you're in school and studying full-time, you don't need to make any payments on your loans, and no interest is going to accrue on your loans at that time either. So it's a good way of funding your education kind of while you're at school. just because of that, there haven't been many students that start to repay their loans while they're still in studies. You can, for sure, if you're working part-time or you're working on campus and you want to start working away on those loans, you can. But it's important to note that that's why you applied to OSAP in the first place, is to help you pay off your tuition and any extra educational costs that come along with. So I hope I answered that question right.
Yeah, it sounds good. And again, if you want to ever contact us at the awards office or contact Sam, she's more than happy to talk to you about your specific situation as well. One more question here that's interesting. The student's applying for the CIBC bursary and the Prestige Scholarship, and that they're noting that they have the same questions about extracurriculars in the applications. Is it okay to use the same answers, or does it lower the chances of getting the award? And is it better to use different answers?
You can base your answers for those questions off of the same, let's say, template. That's fine. What I would just strive to do is, even though they're both leadership awards, you may want to reference different scenarios in each one. So I know some students, what they do when they start answering those questions is kind of pull up a scenario that best showcases their leadership skills. I would recommend just varying those a little bit. So they can be very similar, like in skeleton wise in your answer, but then just kind of swap out some of the information to showcase yourself in the best light. Typically, those awards are adjudicated by separate selection committees, but it's a good idea to kind of vary them just a little bit.
Awesome. And just to confirm, it does not matter whether the applicant submits their reference letter or if the reference sends it in themselves, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Great. Well, I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. That was awesome. So I'll thank you so much, Sam, and we will stick around, including Sam, for 10 minutes or so after this presentation ends to answer any more questions that you have in the live Q&A. So keep those coming if you do have questions. There are a ton of different ways to contact us. So again, at awards@carleton.ca if you want to chat with Sam or her team. If you want to talk to us here over at recruitment and admissions, you can send us an email at admissions@carleton.ca. Don't forget to log into your Carleton 360 account at 360.carleton.ca to monitor the status of your application, which is very exciting. So you can monitor your application status, see if you've received any awards. Don't forget to get your Prestige Scholarship application in by March 1st if that's something that you are looking forward to doing. And if not, we will see you very soon at one of our upcoming Live at 5s. Again, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. We are always so excited to see you there. And maybe we'll see you at one of our March break events. So lots going on, and we can't wait to welcome you to campus virtually for now, but eventually we can't wait to welcome you into our community. So again, my name is Carly. Big shout out and thanks to Sam, who gave us so much great information today. And again, we can't wait to hang around and answer some more of your questions in the Q&A. So have an awesome rest of your night. And we look forward to staying connected and chatting soon. See you.